Hi there everyone, and welcome to another edition of Starry Skies, the magazine programme that tells you all about what you can see in the night sky in this month of February. I'm Mark Hardacre.
And I'm Steve Tonkin.
And today we're going to be looking at the stars and planets and the other celestial delights you can see this month. So first of all, Steve, you've got to really kick us off here with this parade of planets. I'm sure you've been reading the newspapers. Parade of planets is on every page. What is it?
Oh, sorry, you've missed it. It was on the 25th. Oh. No, this is the thing. The newspaper was saying, most of them were saying you could see it on the 25th of January. Well, yes, you could, but you've been able to see it from just about the end of November, and you can carry on seeing it until, coming up to about halfway through February, so you'll see them all.
So what is a parade of... What does it really mean?
Well, I'm not sure why they use the term, but what it is there's just... Most of the naked eye planets are in the sky. Mercury isn't. So if you go out, once it gets dark and you look over in the west, always start in the west because that's what's setting, and we know from bitter experience, if you start somewhere else, what you want in the west has disappeared by the time you go there. Right. Anyway, excuse me. So, you'll see a very, very bright object there, and that's the planet Venus. Just below and to the right of that is another reasonably bright, it looks brighter than any of the stars around, and that is Saturn.
That's two.
Yeah. Then we go right up to the south, and it's a little V-shaped group of stars. And just up from that is another bright one, and that is the planet Jupiter, the king of planets. And then we carry on down to the east, and you'll see two reasonably bright stars quite close to each other, which we're going to talk about later. And just below them, looking still at the moment distinctly reddish, is the planet Mars. So you can see all of those without having to sort of wait for some of them to rise or set if you get up there earlier.
Right.
There's also, if you've got binoculars, you should be able to also find Uranus and Neptune. Right. But we're going to lose Saturn and Neptune into the twilight towards the end of the month. So, get out and look now. Yeah. It's nothing particularly special about it, and they're not particularly rare, but it's just lovely to be able to see it, and it's an opportunity to get out and have a look.
Yeah. Well, do we know why the press media makes such a big deal? Is it just really for clickbait, you think?
I think it probably is, but and somebody comes up with something on such and such a date, most people don't realise that actually there's nothing special about it. Right. And quite frankly, if it gets people looking up, I'm all for it.
And I agree. It's a little like supermoons. We have the supermoon story, don't we? Which is a similar tale where, if us average astronomers look at the moon, never mind the man in the street, average astronomer looks at the moon, a full moon, you really can't tell whether it's 14% bigger or smaller than it normally is.
No, you can't.
It's really just clickbait. But I think, as you say, Steve, there's no such thing as bad publicity about astronomy.
Oh, yeah. But my thing about supermoons is unless it's sporting a red cape and wearing its underpants also red outside its trousers, it's not a supermoon.
He's had a bad weekend, Mr. Tonkin. You can tell, can't you, listeners? Anyway, so let's crack on. What about the moon in February? Well, we have a full moon this time in the middle of the month, around the 12th. So for stargazing, as we've said before, full moons aren't great. It washes out the stars. So we really want to be stargazing at the beginning of the month, now, this week, or at the end, 26th, 27th. That's when the moon will be new again. Although we will get a couple of nice conjunctions this week or this month.
And what are they?
A conjunction, right. A conjunction is when the moon is close to a planet. And as you just said, Steve, we've got a parade of them in the sky. So the moon, as it passes through the zodiac constellations, it's going to pass by the planets. And it does that with Jupiter on Thursday, the 6th of February. That's tomorrow. So if you're listening to the Wednesday version, that's tomorrow. And then on Sunday evening, the 9th of February, the almost full moon will glide past Mars around 6 p.m. So if you're listening to the repeat on Sunday, on the 9th, then do have a look out, see if you can see Mars through the clouds and the murk, right next to the full moon. And do let us know if you see it. Do let us know. We'd be very interested to hear your observations. You can email us at studio@forestfm.co.uk, and station manager will pass on the emails.
He will indeed. Yeah, the other thing to look out for with the full moon is one thing you can see better than just about any other time is the crater Tycho, or Tuco. If you
What's that? Is that a crater on the moon?
It's a crater on the moon, and it's got it's like white rays coming out of it. Right. And that's where, when the meteorite or asteroid or whatever it was that hit the moon to cause that crater, it just threw debris out in literally hundreds of miles in all directions.
And when we look at it in the night sky, we can see the spot on the moon where this impact occurred. Indeed. And it's a bright white patch on the moon, and you can especially see it at full moon.
Yeah.
50-mile crater it left behind?
Oh, something like that. I never remember numbers. I look them up with I fill my silly mind with other things.
So what else we got this month? We've talked about the planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars and Venus, all visible with the naked eye. Uranus, which isn't. Mercury, also not visible at all this month. But stand by, because in March, at the beginning of March, when we do this programme next month, we'll tell you more about Mercury. You should be able to see it in the western sky next month. So stand by for that. Our constellation of the month for February is Gemini, the heavenly twin, Steve.
Yes, one of them being truly heavenly and the other one only part heavenly.
Yeah, that's a good old story. We'll come to that. Yeah. So Gemini will be high in the southern sky around 10 p.m. But let's start. Let's go outside. Let's stand outside on a nice dark night this week, say around 10:30 this first week of the month, and see what we can see.
Okie doke.
So we got the sun. It's still pretty low in the sky.
Yeah.
Right. We've still got wintry sun, haven't we? Although the days are starting to grow noticeably longer as the sun creeps further and further north.
And there have been a couple of days where you've actually felt the warmth from the sun again at last. Yeah. And isn't that nice?
It is. At least spring is here, or getting to be here, although we've got this rain coming that's terrible. Sunset in the listening area is around 5:30 in mid-February. So by dinner time, 6:30, you've got a good dark sky. And it's dark for probably 11 and a half hours. So you get quite a bit of observing, if it were clear, of course. So let's start our trip around the February evening skies in the west. Pop outside now, if it's dark, and have a look towards the sun where the sun's just set. And there in the west, as you mentioned before, Steve, is brilliant Venus.
Yeah.
And it really is. You can't miss it. It's like a searchlight in the sky, brilliant white. Why is it so bright? Is it because it's near, or what is it?
Well, there's two things. One is it is relatively near at the moment, but actually if you look at it with telescope, you'll see it's actually showing a crescent, like a crescent moon. Right. It's getting closer and closer and closer, and as that happens, but it's also got a very high, what we call albedo. That's very reflective. So it reflects about 90% of the light that falls onto it, as opposed to the moon, for example, which only reflects about 10% of the light that falls onto it. Right. So if you want to photograph it, you've actually got to go about 2 stops smaller on your camera in order to get a decent exposure, smaller than you would on the moon. So
it's very. I've had all sorts of problems trying to image Venus because it's so bright.
Yeah.
In a big telescope, you're collecting all that light, and it's really very, very bright indeed.
A lot of people will do it during daytime because it's actually easier.
Yep. So there we've got Venus. It should be visible until about 8 o'clock in the evening, 8:30 probably. But if you go out a little earlier, while it's still high in the sky, look below it. Yeah. There you'll see Saturn, which we're only going to have for a couple more weeks. It's going to slowly disappear into the twilight. And then it's lost for several months. We won't see it again, in fact, until July, when it will return in the morning sky on the other side of the sun.
Yeah.
And also, Saturn right now is losing its rings. We talked about this last month a little bit, but when you look at Saturn right now, all you can see is the globe, no rings.
Yes, sometimes, it depends what you're using. You might see what looks like almost a line across the planet, which is the rings almost edge on. But they will come back, give it 7 years, and they'll be wide open again, and it'll be gorgeous.
I hope we're doing our podcast in 7 years' time, Steve. What do you think? I hope so.
Oh, well, I'm planning on being here still. So,
So, we were looking there to the west. Now, turn our gaze, and we're going to now direct our viewing towards the south. And, of course, in February, looking south at 10:30 in the evening, you really can't miss our old friend Orion the Hunter.
oh, yeah.
Still the best-known constellation, don't you think?
I think it probably is. It's a toss-up between that and then those 7 stars of the Big Dipper.
Yeah, the Plough, as it's called. So Orion, there you've got the flashing white Rigel, which is the bright star at the lower right of the constellation. And then opposite it, in the top left, you can see blazing orange Betelgeuse, which completely opposite stars. One is a cool red supergiant, and the other is a blazing white supergiant.
The other nice thing you can do around there, if you take the belt stars of Orion, so the 3 stars in the middle, and you follow them down to the left, they point to the brightest star in the night sky, which is Sirius. And you want to get Sirius for fun when it's just rising.
Yeah.
It's coming through a lot of atmosphere, and you'll see it twinkles different colours.
Yeah.
And if you get your phone out and make sure you're moving your phone as you're photographing it, you'll see you get a little line, or a wobbly line, because you won't, and it'll all have loads of different colours on it.
Yeah, it's most remarkable. The brighter the star, so Sirius and Rigel especially, but Sirius less of all, when you see it low down, it twinkles, it changes colour from red to green to yellow to back to green and blue again. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
And, it's very nice. That is the brightest star in the sky. A lot of people think it's the North Pole, the North Star, is the brightest in the sky, but it's not. It's Sirius. So, as you say, that's from the belt down, Steve.
From the belt down to the left.
Right. What about if we go the opposite direction, from the belt up?
Well, then you get to a reddish star, which is called Aldebaran.
And that's in which constellation?
That's Taurus. That's the blazing eye of the bull.
Ah, right.
So it's one of the tips of that V-shaped group of stars I mentioned earlier.
I got it. And then from there, I think we're pretty close to Jupiter, so we could almost use the belt of Orion to find Jupiter.
Indeed,
although honestly, we don't.
you don't
need anything to find
it's
Jupiter.
It's so blooming obvious.
Yeah, it's Jupiter right now is the 4th brightest object in the sky. Sun, Moon, Venus we've talked about, and then not overhead but mid-sky and high up, unmistakable, is the planet Jupiter. And it'll be there for at least a couple more months into April or even May, probably. Due south as darkness falls, you can't miss it. Get your binoculars out or a small telescope and see if you can see the famous 4 Galilean moons. Yeah. We've talked about these before: Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. They're worlds of their own. They're bigger than, or Ganymede is even bigger than Mercury. So they are enormous moons.
Are huge. And they're all of Jupiter's moons, the named ones, are named after lovers of Zeus, who we'll come to later with another one of his lovers.
Of which he had plenty, I believe. He had plenty.
Yes.
Okay, so back to Orion. Let's start at Rigel then, which is bottom
right.
Right, that's correct. Up through the belt to Betelgeuse and keep on going, and you will find now the orange-red planet Mars. Now, Mars is past its best right now, but it's sitting in the middle of this month's constellation of the month, which is Gemini. Past its best, it's receding from the Earth and growing dimmer. But you still can't miss Mars, can you? It's really quite bright.
It's clearly red still.
Yeah. So that'd be the 5th brightest star in the sky right now, right? We've got Sun, Moon, Venus, Jupiter, and then Mars.
Yeah,
and,
it was last month brighter than Jupiter.
Yeah,
and but it changes brightness enormously because the proportion of its nearest distance to us and its furthest distance is much greater than any other planet.
Yeah. So have a look for Mars. And, of course, it's in the constellation of Gemini, which is one of the 12 zodiac constellations through which all the solar system objects, Sun, Moon, and all the planets pass during the year. And Gemini is, you could recognize it, it's the 2 brightest stars, Castor and Pollux, similar brightness, and in February they'll form a nice isosceles triangle with Mars. So if you can find Mars, the 2 nearby stars, similar brightness, are Castor and Pollux.
They'll be just to the left of it, won't they? Just to the left of Mars.
Just to the left, yes. So if you're looking at Mars at 10:30, say, Mars will be to the right of the two stars. That's right. Castor and Pollux. Gemini actually represents the twin sons of Leda. Now, do you know who Leda was?
Leda the Swan. Oh, no, it was Leda and the Swan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good, I think it's Roman myth, that one, I think.
This is a Greek myth. This Leda is the Queen of Sparta.
Okay.
And she had at least 2 children by different fathers. And you know what's coming here, Steve.
Yeah.
You know what's coming. So Castor was her first son, born... They were twins, actually, but Castor's the first one, born of King Tyrrhadius, who was her husband. While Pollux, the twin brother, I don't know how did they figure this out? I don't know. But Pollux was fathered by Zeus, disguised as a swan. Now, just a minute. Castor and Pollux are twins, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they got different fathers, haven't they?
Yeah, let's not go
Shall
there.
we not go there?
Let's not go there.
But as a consequence of that, if you are born of a god, then you are immortal.
Yeah.
So Pollux was immortal, whereas poor Castor was not. It's a bit of a pest, that, wasn't it? If you're Castor, you don't really want to get into a fight with anybody. But both these chaps sailed with Jason on the good ship Argo in search of the Golden Fleece. And if you've seen the film Jason and the Argonauts, you'll see both Castor and Pollux, although he's called Polydeuces, I do believe. Is that right, Steve? Am I right?
No, Polydeuces was somebody else, I think.
We should have done the research before we came on the radio.
Yeah, that would
we?
help. There's lots of polys.
There's a Polly. Yeah, but he's his brother. Anyway, Castor was killed in battle, and of course then poor old Pollux had lost his twin brother. Pollux pleaded then with Zeus to bring him back, which Zeus agreed to, provided that they spend half their lives in the sky and half back on Earth, which is what they do. Gemini is above the horizon for about half the year, and then it sinks below the horizon. We don't see it again until autumn or winter. So Zeus kept his word, and the two brothers are arm in arm now as they cross the sky in winter. So, yeah. So Castor is classified as Alpha Geminorum, but it's not the brightest star in Gemini, is it?
No.
Which is?
The immortal brother.
You mean Pollux?
Yes.
No. So it's even more confusing, isn't it? So Beta Geminorum is Pollux, and it's the brightest star.
It's slightly brighter. Yeah, because people make mistakes when they're looking at brightness, and if stars are even slightly different colours, it then becomes difficult to tell which is brighter.
That's true, isn't it? Castor is a lovely double star, isn't it? If you get your telescope out, if you have a look at Castor, it's a pure white star with a companion that you can see in just a moderate telescope. Not binoculars, I don't think, but you can... You see in binoculars? Don't think so.
Haven't tried.
No, but I think a nice telescope will show it. Whereas Pollux is a yellowy orange giant star, and you can see that difference with the naked eye. And that may explain, in fact, why Castor was picked as the brightest when actually Pollux isn't, but, different colour stars. Yeah. So what else we got in Gemini then, Steve? We've got, it's the home to one of the nicest star clusters in the sky, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It's right the other end. If you, to the right, Gemini looks a bit like a quite elongated rectangle. So you go down to the other end, and the upper foot, the bit sticking out there, and just scan round that area with binoculars, and there is this delightful cluster. It's really hot white stars. It's sometimes called the Queen of Clusters, Messier 35. And it's just, if you love star clusters, which I do, I just think they're gorgeous. Yeah. And they're ideal for binoculars and small telescopes. And have a look. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It's great, I think. Yeah,
it's one of my favourites as well. I've imaged it. I've looked at it with binoculars and telescopes. It was discovered before Messier. I think Charles Messier did not discover it, but he catalogued it when he was looking for his comets and decided that he would put M35, as he now calls it, into his catalogue. have a look for it. It's a very easy cluster to find, and we have marked it on our star chart for this month, which you can find on the Forest FM website, as well as our local Astronomical Society websites. A pair of 10 by 50 binoculars will show it. It's a collection of around 200 stars packed together, and it's about 2,500 light years away from us. That means we're seeing it as if it was 2,500 years way before.
Going on 2,500 years ago.
Yeah, that's a long
We're looking
time.
at when Plato was alive. And things like that.
That's right. So, what else have we got in Gemini then? How about Zeta?
Zeta Geminorum. Geminorum just means of Gemini. Is a very nice little variable star. Now, variable star is a star that varies in brightness, and there's lots of reasons this can happen. But if you want to practice looking at one, this is actually quite a good one because its period, the time it takes to vary, is only just over 10 days. So you can see easily over the course of a month, you can see how this star dims and gets brighter again.
Okay. We'll mark that also on the chart. Variable stars are a very interesting and worthwhile pursuit. There are thousands of them in the sky. You can buy star charts or download them these days and compare the variable star's brightness with other nearby stars of given brightness and send your results off. And it's a real genuine scientific value. You know, people are still trying to figure out why these stars vary in brightness. And the more data we gather about how bright and how dim they are over a period of many centuries, it's helped scientists to figure out what is actually going on inside these stars.
Well, this one is actually a thing called a Cepheid or Cepheid variable.
All right.
And they are really important stars because Henrietta Swan-Leavitt at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries realized that the variability, the time it takes to vary, the period, is dependent upon their intrinsic brightness. So if you can measure the period of variability, you know how bright it actually is. And then you can see how bright it actually looks, and that can tell you how far away it is.
Right.
So it's a way of finding distances in the relatively nearby universe, and it was used to find the distance of the Andromeda Galaxy.
So these are what we call standard candles, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we know how bright it is, how bright it should be, and then we see how dim it is because it's so far away. Calculate the distance, and that's been up until recently anyway the most accurate way of calculating how far something is in the sky.
Yeah. For relatively nearby stuff. Yeah.
So, and then we were talking about Gemini being one of the zodiac constellations. There are 12 of those, Steve. We also have then 88 total constellations in the sky right now. Have there always been 88 constellations, or have there been more?
No, there've been more. There's been less. There've been, it depends. I mean, different cultures have different constellations.
Right. So all these 88 constellations are just recent inventions then?
Well, no. Some of them are very ancient inventions, but they were standardized, I think it was back in 1928, by the International Astronomical Union by agreement, so all the boundaries and that were there. Before that, there weren't even set boundaries for a lot of these things. And people invented different constellations, just because of the way of finding a way around the sky. And there's one of these in Gemini. And was coming from the 16th century, I think. Petrus Plancius, his name was. And he called it the Little Crab, or Cancer Minor. Cancer means crab. And it's to the left of the main stars of Gemini. I think it's lovely, particularly in binoculars, because it's this little group of stars. You've got two at the bottom right end, and then a line of another 4 or 5, depending on how dim you can see. And they're all different colours. And so for anybody who ever thought that your Cancer Minor, this defunct constellation, is a really good way of showing no, stars are not all the same colour.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do, because you can't find that on any star chart, Steve, of course. So we'll mark it on our star chart with a little circle to show you where this now defunct constellation is. It's just in the eastern corner of Gemini.
Yeah.
We'll point it out for you. Okay, what else we got? So we've been looking south. We've looked at Gemini, which is sort of south east. Let's turn our gaze back towards the north again. We'll find our old friend, the plough there. But the plough now has moved, hasn't it? It's no longer dipping along the northern horizon. It's swinging up into the east.
That's right.
It's standing more or less on its tail.
Yep.
And we've always said this is such a wonderful constellation to use as a signpost. And if we follow it down, take around 10:30 again in mid-month, if we take the third and fourth stars in the plough and follow them down...
Counting from where? Counting from the bottom or counting from the top?
Counting from the top. Yeah, so it's the pointers, the pointers are the front two stars of the plough, if you will. Count those as 1 and 2. So 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4.
So you go from
4 to 3.
Yeah.
So down you'll find then a bright star in one of our favourite constellations, which is Leo the Lion. Leo is just rising now in the late evening sky in the east. And when you see the stellar grouping of Leo, you know that winter is finally behind us and spring is on its way.
And it's also one of the constellations, I think, that if you join the dots, it almost looks like what it's meant to be. It looks like a reposed lion.
Yeah, exactly right. And one of my favourites, and you can really tell, it's at night, you can smell the grass growing, you see Leo rising. Another star to find, let's see if we can get this one. Let's go right to the tail of the bear. Now, bears don't have tails, but the plough has a handle. So take the handle of the plough and follow it down almost to the horizon. And there you'll see another twinkling star. And that will be the orange giant Arcturus in the constellation of Boötes. And that is another sign that warmer times are coming.
Yeah. Arcturus is the brightest star in the northern hemisphere of the sky.
Yep.
You'll get a lot of shimmer off that one.
Yeah. But we'll come to Arcturus when it's more. You'll be able to see it around 10:30, maybe 11 at night at the end of February. So it's starting to appear in the northeastern sky. But more about that later. Anyway, all these constellations that we've talked about can be seen on our monthly sky chart, which you'll find on our Forest FM fan website, as well as online at Fordingbridge Astronomers and Wessex Astronomical Society Facebook pages. If you're interested in finding more about astronomy, then do please contact your local clubs. We are dying to meet you. We love to see new members, and you're always welcome. You don't need anything. You don't need any expensive equipment, and there's no such thing as a silly question. We love to have new members, old and young, coming along, and you'd be most welcome. Fordingbridge Astronomers meets every third Wednesday in the month at the Elm Tree in Hightown in Ringwood. Wessex Astronomical Society.
It's the first Tuesday of the month at the Allendale Centre in Wimborne.
And Cranbourne Chase Astronomy Club meets on the second Wednesday of the month at the Grosvenor Hotel in the centre of Shaftesbury. That's a little bit out of our listening area, but if you live up in that direction or you want to pop along, all three of these clubs are very, very friendly, and we all want to see you. So with that, we would like to thank you for listening today.
Indeed.
And we look forward to talking to you again next month.
And hopefully it'll be warmer.
Let's hope so. And not as wet, please. No
that
clouds.
That would be nice.
So it's goodbye from me, Mark Hardacre.
And from me, Steve Tonkin.
And most importantly of all, clear skies.